In today's video, we're going to be doing a ranking of every single restricted legendary Pokemon in BSS Regulation J. Ignore that it says VGC. No one, unfortunately, VGC is the main one, so no one actually made a Battle Stadium singles sort of tier list. But again, same thing applies. We all have the same Pokemon. VGC is just doubles, BSS is just singles. So yeah, we're going to be doing that today. And before we get into ranking some of these Pokemon, I just want to say that I'm not like this top BSS player. I've just like played this. I started playing the format on a somewhat regular basis now, and like, you know, I think I'm doing pretty decent, and in general I think I'm a good Pokemon player. So, you know, don't take my opinion as complete fact. It's just like my opinion of what I've seen and what I've used, and like how all of these Pokemon operate in the current meta game. But yeah, if you like this video, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel, join the kingdom, all of that good stuff. But yeah, let's quickly go over the tiers. We got S, which, you know, the meta, you're going to see these guys all the time. A is like top restricted, it's not as good as the S ones. B ones are like, they're still pretty good options, but not as good as A. C is like, you're getting into like somewhat niche territory, but they could still put up a decent showing. D is pretty much just mons that aren't good, or they're just wholly outclassed by the mons above them. And then F is pretty much unmons, you know, Pokemon that aren't good at all, like they just completely suck. And as Thunder Blunder says, they're dicks. So yeah, that's for F tier. And then we have the Cosmo section, because these guys have a combined like 8 moves between the both of them. So we're not gonna waste time talking about those guys. But yeah, let us begin off with our Gen 1 restricted legendaries with Mewtwo. Now Mewtwo, I'm not gonna put Mewtwo in F, because I feel like F is really reserved for the ones that are completely outclassed, and or they're just like really bad. You know, things like your Fiona, spoiler alert, is gonna go into Onmons. But Mewtwo, on the other hand, I don't want to say Mewtwo goes into F, but I can't put Mewtwo any higher than D rank, just because I'm like, Mewtwo hasn't really done anything in BSS. Again, like, it has massive competition with the likes of Calyrex Shadow, even something like Lunala, other just strong psychic type Pokemon, even other strong special attackers that I would soon even use Deoxys normal over Mewtwo. And that might sound crazy to you, but at least Deoxys normal has 150 speed, so it can actually outspeed mons like Chien-Pao. You're going to be running a Focus Sash regardless, and it could still revenge Cal. Even Deoxys N is just worse Deoxys attack. But yeah, Mewtwo speed tier has honestly just been crept so much. Like 130 is not good enough in Generation 9, and that's crazy to say considering the fact that at least up until like Gen 6 and even Gen 7, 130 speed was seen as like the gold standard. So yeah, Mewtwo is having a very tough time. I don't think there's much reason to actually use Mewtwo in BSS Reg J right now. And yeah, that's a shame, because this is the OG legendary, the strongest Pokemon of Gen 1. And look at it in Gen 9, it's not really doing much. But yeah, moving on to Mew. Probably put Mew in D tier as well. Again, like, Mew just doesn't have the stats or the power to really do anything. Like, when you have 2 options for restricted, like in Regulation J, you want to be stacking the strongest of the strong, or even just Pokemon that are able to even contend with the strongest of the strong. Like, for example, I'm not going to say Dialga is a Miraidon check, but it does have enough like attributes to actually somewhat check Miraidon. But I'm not going to say that Dialga is like a good mon, it's not. But, you know, Mew just doesn't really have anything going for it outside of like, you know, just being a utility sort of Pokemon with Stealth Rock, Will-O-Wisp. But that's not really needed, because Psychic typing is really bad defensively, and again, you're just not bulky enough to really stand with the strongest of the strong in this restricted format. So I'm going to put Mew in D. I don't want to say F yet. It really depends on where else I'm putting other mons. I might drop Mew down to F if I really feel like it, but maybe I'm giving Mew the benefit of the doubt, because, you know, it has a lot of moves and it could somewhat be versatile or do something. But, you know, like, again, I'm reserving F for like the really worst like Pokemon slash they're just completely outclassed. Like, there's zero justification for using them, at least in terms of Mewtwo compared to Calyrex Shadow and Deoxys N. Like, Mewtwo does have bulk, it doesn't have like a 4x ghost or dark weakness, you know, a nerve. Again, not the most clutch ability. I guess Calyrex Shadow has a nerve as well, but, you know, like, Mewtwo just has like better coverage than even Calyrex Shadow. So in that argument, someone could say, oh, Mewtwo is kind of worth using, but again, at the end of the day, Mewtwo is just heavily outclassed by Calyrex Shadow Rider, for example. But yeah, moving on to Lugia. Now, Lugia is pretty much like a BSS Stormon, and these sort of Stormons obviously work in BSS a lot more than VGC. Like, you think I'm going to be respecting Lugia or even a mon like Giratina in VGC? No, not really. But when you're in 3v3 and you have teammates that are actually somewhat bulky, like, Lugia's bulk can come in clutch, but again, typing is a bit abhorrent in this current metagame. Like, Miraidon kind of sits on you. But at the same time, Terrestrialization is always an option, and once you Terrestrialize out of your awful defensive typing, again, Lugia is one of the most bulkiest Pokemon in the game, with a surprisingly fast speed to 110 for whatever reason. So I don't want to put Lugia any higher than D again, but like I can't put in C in good confidence because I haven't seen enough Lugia, or I haven't really used it myself. But if anyone can tell me Lugia is actually worth using or deserves to be higher than D rank, let me know down in the comments. But I'm gonna put it above Mewtwo and Mew because I can definitely see Lugia doing a lot more than these two. But yeah, moving on to something, our first actual good Pokemon here, Ho-Oh. So I don't think I can put Ho-Oh in A yet, but I do think Ho-Oh is a solid B at the minimum restricted legendary, and let me tell you why. Unlike Lugia, which, you know, just fully embraces defense and, you know, has no damage output to speak of, Ho-Oh does come in with 130 attack and 2 really strong stab options. Like Sacred Fire is a very spammable move, and the fact that it has a 50% chance of burning just means that Ho-Oh can check a lot of really threatening physical attackers, the most prevalent one being Calyrex Ice Rider. Again, you're taking a good chunk of damage from Glacial Lance, but if you go Fizz Death, again, you're faster than Calyrex Ice Rider. You obviously hit it with super effective coverage, and they basically either have to Terra into a fire type, which again, not all of them are fire types, or just firm the Sacred Fire burn, and, you know, Calyrex Ice Rider isn't really doing much. Again, if they Terrestrialize into like a water type, you don't necessarily 1v1 it too well, but you know, you also just have phasing as well with Whirlwind, and you have recovery with Regenerator plus the actual move Recover. So yeah, Ho-Oh being able to check some of the dangerous physical attackers that are running around in Regulation J. Even something like Zacian-Crowned, you need Wild Charge to even beat Ho-Oh, and if you don't have Wild Charge, you're not beating Ho-Oh. So, you know, being able to check crazy mons like Zacian-Crowned, even the likes of Chien-Pao as well, definitely means Ho-Oh does a way more stuff than Lugia could ever do, and it just comes down to that typing as well. Not being ice weak does really help Ho-Oh out, and you know, that's pretty obvious in you being able to check 2 of the most common ice physical attackers in Chien-Pao and Ice Rider. So yeah, Ho-Oh starts off in the honest B rank, could potentially move up to A. I doubt it though, considering the fact I know what Pokemon are going to be going in A, but again, Ho-Oh would probably either be at the top of B or maybe low A. We'll see how the rest of the tier list goes. Now, moving on to Kyogre. Now, in the last take I did of the video, this is the second take on making this video. You know, I was having a lot of technical difficulties, let's say. But yeah, hopefully that's all sorted out now. But Kyogre here, before I was going to put Kyogre in like, I was going to put in C, but I might actually respect her a bit more and potentially put in B, because I got schmixed by one on the ladder the other day, or even in a tournament I was playing, and I was like, damn, I have to actually kind of respect Kyogre's damage output. Like, let me not sleep on this Pokemon. And, you know, I was probably sleeping on Kyogre a little bit because I was like, you know, Miraidon kind of just cucks Kyogre in every single sense. And even something like Koraidon can deactivate Kyogre's Weather, and obviously hits it for really hard damage with like Banded or Life Orb sets. But let's say you're not up against Miraidon or Koraidon, Kyogre's still quite a dangerous mon in its own right, and always has been, always will be, just because of its sheer damage output and the fact that it's decently bulky, especially if you invest in physical defense. Like, Kyogre's surviving some hits that you won't expect it to, and then it hits back even harder. So I have to put Kyogre in, like, I can't say it has a decent niche. I do think this mon has its place in the meta game, 100%. I don't think it's better than Ho-Oh, and it's definitely harder to use than Ho-Oh, but after getting beat by Kyogre, I have to actually respect this Pokemon now. Before I put in C, but I think I can comfortably put in B. But again, let me know down below what you think of the tier list, if I'm placing mons too high or too low. Again, not the most expert BSS player, but I'm just sharing my opinion like I always have. So yeah, moving on to Groudon. Yeah, Groudon's an interesting case because there's a lot that Groudon wants to do, and I think it's been outclassed in what it wants to do. Like, if you want a defensive ground type, there's a lot of defensive ground types that offer a lot more utility slash bulk to the table. For example, like, I can even think of something like Clodsire being a water immunity, being just bulky enough to even like take Miraidon's attacks, threaten it back with either Yawn or Earthquake, have access to T-Spikes. Now, of course, Groudon got a lot of really cool moves in Gen 9, like Will-O-Wisps and Spikes, for example, but I don't know if that's really enough to really keep Groudon, because I feel like Power Creep has hit Groudon quite a bit. It's not as bulky as it used to be, just because we're getting a lot more stronger Pokemon, and at the same time, like, it still hits hard, don't get me wrong. Like, Groudon hits hard, but a lot of things hit hard, especially on the physical side as well. So it's like, Groudon is in a weird place. Like, I can't put it in B because I don't think it's a solid option that a lot of teams are running, nor do I think it's not a good Pokemon. I just think Groudon is in that middle state where I'm just like, well, it's not bad, but it's not excellent either. Like, you could probably get some decent use out of Groudon in Reg J, but yeah, this is not a standard mon you're going to be picking up, slapping onto teams as easily. So yeah, I'll put it in C because I can see the potential that Groudon has. But for example, if you want a bulky ground type that, you know, has Fissure, has, you know, some really cool moves like Ruination, Tinglu is right there, and that doesn't take up one of your 2 restricted slots. And that's a big thing with some of these other restricted. Like, the fact that you are actually a restricted is either a detriment to you in general, because there are non-restricted Pokemon that can do better than the actual restricted. So yeah, I'll be taking that a lot into account as well, and that somewhat affects Groudon a decent bit. So yeah, moving on to Rayquaza now. Same thing with Rayquaza. I can't say it's not good, but I also don't think it's a solid option. Like, it's just in the middle. And to be fair, even with the Rayquaza that I've like faced on ladder, like I've seen more Rayquaza than Groudon, which makes a decent amount of sense. Groudon is a bit harder to justify than Rayquaza, but yeah, I've not been impressed with this guy's showing. I think getting U-turn was a pretty cool thing for like choice scarf sets, but you know, losing moves like V-create also don't help Rayquaza's case. But at the same time, like, you know, it could still be a decent Dragon Dance sweeper. You know, give it a Focus Sash, for example, and like, it has Dragon Ascent, which is a pretty powerful stab move. It has extreme speed, that's for priority, and yeah, it still just generally hits hard as well. But yeah, it's just tougher to justify in your restricted slot when you have more like Koraidon, you have Zacian-Crowned. Like, it's speed tier like 95. If I was complaining about Mewtwo's 130, 95 is you know, again, that's like 35 speed lower. So, you know, like, Rayquaza's speed tier is in the pits right now. So like, that's why I'm saying, like, I've seen a lot of choice scarf to make up for the speed tier. But even something like, again, like Palkia is faster. But again, Palkia's not, we'll get onto Palkia, but, you know, Rayquaza's choice scarf sets, again, you could just run faster choice scarfers like Koraidon, Miraidon, and you know, you'll have a good time. But yeah, Rayquaza, again, just that sort of middle line with Groudon. Like, Rayquaza's teetering on like not good in my opinion, because again, I have not been impressed with what I've seen. But yeah, I'll put it below Groudon. Assume all of these are ordered. All of these tiers are going to be ordered. But yeah, moving on to Jirachi. I'm putting Jirachi at the top of D because, again, like, this thing only has one niche, and that's like power flinching. Or even just choice scarf flinching. And again, you're even faster than Rayquaza. You're arguably a better scarfer than fucking Rayquaza, which is insane just because you're at 100 speed. But yeah, this is the only thing that I can see Jirachi doing. I'm not going to put it on Mon because, surprisingly, 60% chance of flinching most of the time, you know, does have its, you know, ways. But again, I don't even think Jirachi's the best flincher out of the restricted Mons. We'll be speaking about another Mon soon. But yeah, Steel offensively just isn't good, and that's the reason why it's worse than the other flinch I'm going to be discussing soon. But you guys already know which flinch I'm talking about. But yeah, Steel is just worse offensively. Again, so many Pokemon that are common just resist Steel. Water types resist Steel like Dondozo. Electro types like Miraidon resist Steel. And yeah, it's not a good time for Jirachi in my opinion. But again, it has a one niche which it can actually do semi-consistently. So that's why I have to put in D and not F. But yeah, moving on to Deoxys, we have our first F rank because I can't justify Deoxys normal being used over Deoxys attack, and that's always been the case since Generation 3, but apparently I found out there was a time when Deoxys normal was using like Chilean Berry to survive Arceus E-Killer's E-Speed. And yeah, I don't know what meta that was in. Maybe it was in Gen 4 Ubers or Farseus meta. I don't know, maybe Gen 5 OU. But yeah, that's literally the only time Deoxys normal has ever been considered over Deoxys attack. And yeah, Regulation J is no different. Deoxys normal is not being considered over Deoxys attack. Now, Deoxys attack, on the other hand, again, I think this is like Mr. Potential Man himself, because I do feel like Deoxys attack can actually function a little bit. Like, I was facing a user the other day, or even just yesterday, just a BSS Reg J match on the ladder, and they'll bring in Size Spam, and to be honest, I don't think Size Spam works too much in the context of BSS compared to VGC, because again, like, you have to bring 3 Mons, one of them has to be the setter, and then you're left with 2 options, and obviously you're going to be bringing Deoxys attack, and then you're kind of left with like 0 defensive utility if you face into something that Deoxys attack can't break consistently, because again, Indeedee are only side terrain set, and Indeedee's no Tapu Lele, I'll tell you that now. So yeah, you're kind of stuck with a do nothing Mon that lacks bulk and lacks damage, you're left with a Mon which does a lot of damage but has negative bulk, and then your last Mon kinda is just awkward. So yeah, Side Spam compared to VGC does not work as well as in BSS in my opinion, but I feel like outside of Side Spam, I think Deoxys attack again just has a lot going for it. Again, is the strongest Pokemon in the tier. It is the strongest Mon in the game with 180 attacking stats, and also has 150 speed, which allows you to speed tower with Calyrex Shadow, and you just end up being this like pretty, I feel like you're a decent revenge killer in general, to be honest, just because of the fact that, you know, you hit everything hard and you're faster than everything. Even though you have no bulk to your name, like you're solid at revenge killing a lot of things, particularly if you get like Stealth Rocks up to break any other potential focus ashes on the other side. Like you can revenge kill Chien-Pao with like superpower / focus blast. For example, Dondozo doesn't like taking Psycho Boost. Nothing likes taking Psycho Boost if you don't resist Psychic or have a decent special defense stat. So yeah, I feel like Deoxys attack, the more I use it, the more I'll end up seeing it. I'll respect a bit more, but again, it's not the most consistent pick, and I do think it has a decent niche, which is why it's going into C rank. Now, Deoxys defense, tough to say, because it's like another one of these Storm ones that could potentially just run away with games depending on the matchup. But again, very matchup dependent, not actually that bulky because it's 50 HP really undercuts into its bulk. But the best thing that Deoxys defense can probably do is like a stored power set, but with cosmic power, of course. But I feel like at that point you could just use an Arceus form, because Arceus has, you know, more than double of Deoxys defense's HP stat, while actually having pretty balanced you know, defensive stats of 120 compared to Deoxys defense's 160. I'm pretty sure Arceus can take hits better than Deoxys defense, just because of the fact that it has a much higher HP stat. But yeah, I don't want to put an F because I don't think it's as bad as Deoxys normal / the fact that it's just a completely bad Mon, but it's probably in that sort of Lugia case where they're basically similar Mons. Like either you're going to be trying to stall something out, but I do think you're better than Lugia because you have access to Taunt, and Taunt is very big in my opinion, because you can stop things like Whirlwind, Ting Lu. You can stop like Yawn from coming out, and against like slower, bulkier teams, if they decide to bring like 2 other defensive Mons, I feel like Deoxys defense can definitely put up a good showing. Now, Deoxys speed, I'm putting this thing automatically in C as well. I think like this can actually be a decent suicide lead. It's also the second fastest Mon in the game, and you know, like Deoxys attack, it doesn't necessarily need to run a focus sash, because again, it does have negative bulk. Not a bulky Mon by any means, but if you go max HP, you know, you actually have the defensive stats to back it up, so you're not going to die in one hit. And again, you're just the second fastest Mon in the game, and your revenge kill potential is actually pretty decent along the side, the fact that you have access to hazard. So yeah, Deoxys speed, pretty good niche. Definitely would consider it to use it more than Groudon and Rayquaza 100%. Now, we're on to Gen 4, and we've got the Dialga, Palkia, we got the Creation Trio here. And Dialga, I already mentioned Dialga a little bit when I was discussing Mewtwo, for example, for Mons that are, you know, like, they're not completely garbage, but like, you know, there isn't much justification to use them. They have their own little niches, but I think Dialga has a unique niche amongst like pretty much all of Pokemon right now, at least the Pokemon available in Generation 9, where I think against the top tiers of the regulation, I think Dialga has a pretty good standing. Now, the reason why I say that is because Dialga has always had good solid bulk. It has 100 HP. I'm pretty sure it has 120 in both defense and special defense, or it has 100 in one of them. I can't really remember, but no, it has 100 special defense. I'm pretty sure it has 120 defense. But yeah, Dialga has always been bulky on both sides of the spectrum, physical and special, and its defensive typing is very unique in the fact that, you know, you're a dragon type that's not weak to dragon, and you're also a dragon type that's not weak to fairy, for example. So you could always come in realistically on a Miraidon and either force them to Terra into a fairy type and them not killing you because you're not weak to fairy, and then you can actually click flash cannon on them, or the fact that they're forced to stay dragon and you could also just click both of your stabs into them. Miraidon's still weak to dragon prior to terrestrialization, and then you can also just revenge kill Miraidon. So I think in terms of being one of the more offensive Miraidon checks, Dialga, there's not much else like Dialga as an offensive Miraidon check, which I have to kind of respect, to be honest. Again, haven't seen it in practice, but on paper, it can act like the calcs don't lie to me. So that's why I actually respect Dialga quite a bit. Koraidon, on the other hand, again, you could actually just terrestrialize into a fairy type and or revenge kill that as well, especially if they don't terrestrialize. But at that point, if they're banded, they Terrafire, Flare Blitz, you're probably dead. But yeah, because you're not going to be going Fizz Death on Dialga, you're going to be going special defensive for Miraidon. But yeah, I just think Dialga has a unique niche for itself where I don't want to put in D necessarily, but I think it's at the top of D because on paper, seems like a pretty decent Miraidon check, I have to say. And then at that point, you're also able to check other sort of special attackers as well, especially other dragon types that are, you know, decently common. Even something like Eternatus, for example. Eternatus is still doing numbers. You can somewhat check Zacian-Crowned. CC is going to do a lot, but you know, if you're able to force Zacian-Crowned out, you have teammates like Dondozo, for example, you get it back in, you survive a CC, either Fire Blast, Flash Cannon, regardless of what you want to do, you're always going to be doing some decent damage back. So yeah, that's why I kind of respect Dialga, but I can't really put in C unless I've actually seen it in practice working as a Miraidon check. Either you go special defensive, you know, leftovers, or, you know, some other item, maybe Troupple-Berry, I don't know, or, you know, you go Assault Vest Dialga, and, you know, you're just even better at tanking Miraidon's hits. Even something like Calyrex S, hit them back even harder. But yeah, yeah, we'll see how Dialga goes for the rest of the regulation. I'll definitely try and use it, but again, like, it's hard for me to break out into some of these guys in D rank because I'm like, I'd rather just use the guys in SNA or even something in B, you know, to get the job done as my restricted. But yeah, I won't sleep on Dialga. Dialga-Origin, on the other hand, unfortunately, I cannot see any justification for using this form over the OG one. Yeah, you get 20 more special defense at the cost of having no item. Yeah, there's literally no reason to use Dialga-Origin whatsoever. You know, not being able to have leftovers, not being able to run Assault Vest. Like, why would I want a Dialga with higher base special defense when I can just go regular Dialga with an Assault Vest, for example? And you could probably say, oh, at least you're still able to use rocks. But at that point, like, I'll use rocks on someone else. I'll have Ting-Lu or something, or even have like some lead like Samurai Hisui with Ceaseless Edge spikes. Like, there's other ways of fitting hazards which doesn't require me using an inferior version of restricted that already is somewhat niche in itself. So yeah, no justification for Dialga-Origin whatsoever. Now moving on to Palkia, on the other hand, again, I don't think Palkia is an on-mon. A lot of these restricteds aren't good Pokemon, but I wouldn't call a lot of them on-mons, because I could feel like if you really tried your best, you could get a couple of games with these guys somewhat working, but at the same time, you're going to be hella disadvantaged because they're just pretty much outclassed, and that's in the case of Palkia as well. Now in the past, Palkia used to be one of the most dangerous Pokemon of all time. You know, it was a pretty fast for the time Dragon type with very high special attack for the time that it was created as well, and would go on for at least the next generation or two after its release. But you know, Palkia has been having harder and harder time as Power Creep came, stronger Dragon types came to the table as well, and even in Gen 8 they decided to give it an origin form which we only got available in Gen 9 anyway, which honestly did improve it, but base Palkia is somewhat hard to justify in Regulation J, and that's for a pretty good reason. Again, its speed tier is not good anymore. 100 is not enough to cut it, and you're pretty much relegated to being a Scarfer or just using Palkia-Origin, which I think is better Palkia, but that one also has its own problems, which we'll be getting into now. So yeah, I'm pretty much down to put Palkia like just above Mewtwo. I think they're basically the same level. I don't think they're that good in general. But yeah, moving on to Palkia-Origin, I think this also goes into the top of D, because why would I use this over Miraidon? You're pretty much item locked for 120 speed when I could just use Miraidon, which has 135 speed. You know, there's not much else to say. Even Eternatus, 130 speed, could actually stall out my opponent, has access to cosmic power, can be a very annoying Pokemon, arguably comparable defensive typing. So yeah, not much else going for Palkia-Origin, but it is a lot better than its original form, at least in the context of Regulation J, just because you're faster, your stabs hit harder, and yeah, I just think the elevation in speed really does help Palkia-Origin's case. But again, the speed tests are even higher than Palkia-Origin now. 120 is even difficult now, so yeah, it's just a tough situation to be in all around. Well yeah, moving on to Giratina Altered, I'm going to put this guy at the bottom of C, because again, not one that I've seen too often, but I did face it recently and it can be kind of annoying. Again, these sort of Stooly Mons, again, always will have their stock in the singles 1v1 metagame, because again, if you bring the wrong Pokemon, these guys can just set up on you or just stall you out. And you know, Giratina has pressure, arguably can PB stall, you can set up Calm Mind as well, and yeah, you have a very annoying Pokemon to deal with. Giratina-Origin, on the other hand, I was gonna say it's worse than his altered form, but I do think they're you know, doing two different roles at the same time. For example, like Giratina-Origin is probably one of the better revenge killers of Calyrex Shadow and even Calyrex Ice, to be honest. And you're also just bulky enough that even the post-terrestrialization, you will actually survive like a Choice Specs Miraidon attack, most likely, I believe, because you have 150 HP. Surely you're surviving. So it comes down to a point where you can actually just do a decent amount of damage, and I just think that Giratina-Origin is just a decent Pokemon in its own right. Definitely better than Dialga and Palkia 100%, but yeah, I can't really put it any higher because it hasn't proven itself like that, and I don't think it will prove itself like that because the metagame again is somewhat hostile to it. So yeah, Fiona, I'm not wasting much time on that guy. So yeah, it just goes into F tier. I'm not putting it in Cosmog, like this tier is reserved for them because they are just like, they're not real Pokemon. So obviously Unmons is where the real, in inverted commas, Pokemon go, and Fiona is like pretty bad. So yeah, not much else to say. Manaphy, on the other hand, I don't want to say it's an Unmon. It's pretty much close to that, because I can't really justify using up your restricted slot. And Manaphy is one of those Pokemon that I'm going to call in this video sub-legendary Pokemon LARPing as restricted. And what I mean by that is that they're pretty much sub-legendary in terms of their BST, in terms of their power level, but they are given the unfortunate title of restricted, which means that their stock actually just goes down. Their stock goes down because you're not using a sub-legendary as your restricted when you could actually use better sub-legendaries that don't take up the restricted slot. So you guys get what I'm saying here. So yeah, unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to put Manaphy in Unmon. Probably below Dialga-Origin, but I don't know. Like, at the same time, all of these guys in Unmons, you're not using them at all. So does the ranking really matter? Does the placement really matter? I don't really know. But yeah, Darkrai, on the other hand, Darkrai is also a sub-legendary LARPing as a restricted. Again, it's 600 base stat total. It is kind of being power crept, especially in Generation 9. And I'm like, there isn't much justification for using Darkrai whatsoever. So again, is this another Unmon category? I'll probably put it up again higher than Dialga-Origin, just because of the fact that but at that point, if I'm putting Darkrai in Unmon, surely I have to put Mew in Unmon as well. At this point, yeah, I think I'll put Mew in Unmon because, like, I just can't see any scenario where these guys are taking on one of my two restricteds. It's just not happening. But yeah, another Unmon, we got Shaymin. Like, Shaymin's just worse than the Sky form. There's not much else to say. Would I use it over Manaphy? No. So yeah, it goes below Manaphy. Shaymin-Sky, on the other hand, yeah, I'm going to put this guy in decent niche. Like, maybe I'm heavily biased and I'm overestimating Shaymin's capabilities. And I know I am. But, like, I've had success with this guy in Tour. So, therefore, I'm going to put him C. What can I say? Flinching really does have that aura to it. And the fact that you also have access to Healing Wish, which is actually a pretty good utility move as well outside of your flinching. So, yeah, I think Shaymin-Sky can actually succeed. You know, assuming that you get off your flinches. Like, flying is a lot better stab than steel, so obviously Jirachi sitting in here, and Shaymin-Sky is also at 127 speed, so yeah, it's definitely going in C in my opinion. Now Reshiram, on the other hand, yeah, Reshiram's outclassed by Chi-Yu, guys. So what does that tell you about Reshiram's place in the metagame? That a non-restricted outclasses you in every single way. Yeah, it doesn't bode well for Reshiram whatsoever. So yeah, I'm gonna put Reshiram below Palkia. Am I putting Mewtwo above? I'm probably putting Mewtwo above Reshiram. Yeah, I see zero justification for Reshiram. I'm sorry. It's not going in Unmons because, again, like I'm reserving Unmons for the ones that completely do nothing, or the ones that are just wholly outclassed. And I don't think Reshiram is wholly outclassed by Chi-Yu, but at the same time, it's very tough for me to even justify using Reshiram, because if I want a Pokemon that's comparable to it in the restricted, either I'm using Miraidon, which is obviously Miraidon, or even I'm testing out Kyurem-White, which is faster, stronger, and you know, like, has a better like moves for the metagame at large. Because at least you have Freeze Dry to target water types with your Ice Stab, and you're also just stronger and faster than Reshiram. So yeah, Reshiram lives a sad existence, always has. always will. Even though it's a shame because I prefer Reshiram over Zekrom, or my Gen 5 duo. So yeah, Zekrom on the other hand, also in a pretty similar situation. Like, you're worse than your Kyurem counterpart, number 1, and number 2, you share the same typing with Miraidon, and number 3, as a physical dragon type, you're pretty much forced to be a settle sweeper, because if you want to be a breaker, just use Koraidon, because Koraidon is faster than most of the metagame. But Zekrom is stuck at base 90 like it was in 2011, so yeah, not much else to say about Zekrom. It's just not good. It just is not good, which is a shame, to be honest, because if Kyurem-Black didn't exist, let's say Kyurem-Black was deleted from the game and you just had base Zekrom, you could justify base Zekrom because it has Terra Volt DD, it has a really strong stab move in Volt Strike, which comes in at 130 base power. You know, you beat unaware Pokemon like Clodsire and Dondozo, and then yeah, like, you can realistically start sweeping. You also get loaded dice scale shot to double your speed. You have a multi-hit move, and yeah, I think Zekrom would be a decent, but it would be in the same place Kyurem-Black is in currently if Kyurem-Black didn't exist. But that's not the case, not the timeline we live in. So yeah, I can't put Zekrom any higher. So yeah, it's just quite a shame. Kyurem is also another one heading into our unmon territory because there's no reason to use it over any of its both forms. Like, if you want a physical Kyurem, use Kyurem-Black. If you want a special Kyurem, use Kyurem-White. Not much else to say. Kyurem-Black, I'm gonna say decent niche. Probably above Shaymin, maybe even above Giratina, to be honest. I actually kind of respect Kyurem-Black's place in the metagame right now. I enjoyed it a lot in Red Eye because, you know, I hated facing the Dondozo Tinglu cores, and you know, those cores were like, they're still heavily used now because they just checked some of the top restricteds, and Kyurem-Black is able to beat both of them because you DD Terra Electric, you obviously hit Dondozo super effectively and obviously force them to Terra so they don't get blasted by Fusion Bolt, and then you also have multi-hit moves with Icicle Spear. You do a lot of damage. Again, you have the second highest attack stat in the game, just behind Deoxys attack. So yeah, you honestly hit very, very hard, and you know, it's a bit tough to use. You know, is it better than Rayquaza? I'm putting above these guys. I'll be honest. Like, I'm using Kyurem-Black over Groudon and Rayquaza any day. But yeah, maybe I'm overrating Kyurem-Black. Maybe you believe so, but I've had success with it, and I actually do like it a lot. It has its own place in the metagame. Not a mon that's spammable by any means, because again, it's very setup reliant. Decently Terra reliant as well, especially if you are facing Dondozo based teams, and yeah, like it does a decent job. It does a decent job. Give me a sec, guys. Oh yeah, sorry about that, but yeah, so I just had to check something quick. I didn't cut it because hopefully it didn't actually take that long. But yeah, Kyurem-White, we got better Reshiram here, and to be honest, it's not encompassing the same sort of niche as Chi-Yu, because number 1, Kyurem-White is not a fire type that is going to be relying on some boosted stab attack. So again, I'm not going to be comparing Kyurem-White to Chi-Yu. Reshiram can be compared to Chi-Yu because again, that's always been the comparison between them, at least in the 9th gen. But Kyurem-White has always been compared to Reshiram, and is honestly been seen as the better Reshiram all this time. So how does it stack? Well, it's better than Reshiram, I can tell you that. Always has, always will be. But at the same time, how does it fare in BSS Reg J in general? Well, it's suffering a little bit, I'll tell you that. It's suffering a little bit, and it obviously hits hard, but you're just outclassed by Miraidon. Like, that's just the case. You want a good special attack as well, you have Calyrex Shadow, and even outside of that, like, you have non-restricted legendaries like what do you call it, Fluttermane. You have you know, I think Fluttermane is also another big one, because that's also a really fast attacking ghost type Pokemon that does a good chunk of damage. Like, even though Kyurem-White can do a lot more damage than Fluttermane, it's just tough to justify when you're stuck with 95 base speed. So yeah, I believe that it's going above Palkia, at least base Palkia, just because you're stronger, and I think that your typing fits the metagame more. Like, Freeze Dry can honestly just cook something like Kyogre. You could cook Dondozo, Tinglu. You also have Dragon Stab as well. So I do think you're doing a decently better job than Palkia, but I think they're both comparable in terms of you know, how well they both do. Keldeo, yeah, Keldeo is going in here, guys. I don't think anyone can really justify Keldeo seeing the light of day in BSS Reg J. That's just how it is. And I do have to say the same goes for Meloetta, but I do have to shout out for the fact that Meloetta unironically can be the best Calyrex Shadow check out of the restricted Pokemon, which is actually insane to say, because you obviously are immune to Ghost and resist Psychic, so they're pretty much forced to Terra Fairy Draining Kiss, and obviously Meloetta has enough special bulk to even tank that. It has 100 HP and 128 special defense, so, you know, I think Meloetta has that one niche, and that's all it's going to do. Can check Lunala as well, can check Necrozma-Dawnwings, can check Fluttermane. But it's tough. Maybe I should put it a bit. I'll probably put it above Deoxys normal, because I'm not using Deoxys normal over Deoxys attack. But if I want to test with Meloetta and use its unique traits to my advantage, yeah, I'll definitely consider at some point or another. But again, it is a Meloetta. The power level is not at its state, but being able to conveniently counter some of the top restricteds, I have to respect that. But yeah, Diancie, tough to say. I don't know why I'd use Diancie, to be honest. Like, I don't really see much justification for using it. Its typing is pretty bad. It doesn't really do any damage. It's bulky, but it kind of has the Deoxys defense issue of low HP, high defenses, and you arguably have a worse typing than Deoxys defense. So yeah, I don't really know what to say. I'm probably gonna put it on Mon, I guess. Like, I just don't see any reason to use it. I don't think it's good. It's taking up one of your restricted slots. Like, that's a pretty big stock to invest in a mon that probably won't get you any mileage. So yeah, Volcanion on the other hand, I know people try Volcanion in VGC, but I don't really see any reason why I would use it in BSS. Like, it's not really checking anything too well. Its typing is meh, like, at best. Like, Water Fire, like, is meh at best, at least stab wise. Like, offensively, like, you're gonna get walled pretty easily. You're not particularly that bulky for the power level, and you're also not fast. So unfortunately, Volcanion, I'm going to have to put you Index. There's not much else to say. You're not worth, nothing's going after Fiona on this list, but I think Volcanion and Keldeo are pretty much just in a similar position of, yeah, they're just not built for this shit, man. They're just not built for this. Hoopa is yeah, we're filling up the dick section so easily. I don't get it, but yeah, Hoopa is not doing anything either. Like, I would soon use Necrozma-Dawnwings, and even that guy is kind of suffering a little bit. So yeah, Hoopa is not doing anything whatsoever. Unbound on the other hand, I was gonna say, like, maybe if this was just a regulation with just mythicals and you ban every single legendary, sub-legendary, maybe Hoopa Unbound could shine. But I, again, can't really see a use case for this one. But I know that it's powerful. I know that it's strong. It has decent bulk with an Assault Vest, I can say. And, you know, Scarf can actually be a decent, like, switcher upper with Trick and annoy, like, defensive cause. I'm not going to say it's an unmon, but like, I'm gonna put at the bottom of D, because I could see some potential with this guy. But again, like, your typing does you no favors. You have no resistances. You have one immunity to Psychic, which you would have resisted anyway if you want a Dark type. And yeah, that's all she wrote, unfortunately. Solgaleo, yeah, so someone can show me a replay of Solgaleo actually doing anything in the last few regulations, and maybe I'll believe in Solgaleo. But for now, I don't think I can believe in Solgaleo at all. I don't think it really does anything. To be honest, again, the typing kind of sucks, and anything that you would want to do, I think the Cosmo Dustmane just does it a lot better. So yeah, that's the unfortunate reality of Solgaleo. First boxer legendary to actually go into Unmon tier, because again, I just don't see any justification for Solgaleo in the current metagame. But yeah, Lunala on the other hand, we'll finally stop talking about shitters. That's a good thing. I've been talking about shitters for like the past 10 minutes. But yeah, I think Lunala is another restricted in this sort of Ho-Oh / Kyogre tier, where they have a lot of really good attributes that actually, you know, apply to the meta in real time and can actually be seen on a somewhat regular basis. Now, Lunala is pretty much carried by Shadow Shield. If it didn't have Shadow Shield, it would pretty much be in the same situation as Necrozma-Dawnwings, except that you just have a faster mon, and even then, like, you could argue Necrozma-Dawnwings could be better, because as prisoner armor, well, we wouldn't know what ability Lunala would have without Shadow Shield, but you have a Pokemon that has higher special attack, slower so you can activate Trick Room, and you also have access to higher special attack, Meteor Beam, and so on. So yeah, Shadow Shield is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but you know, that heavy lifting is actually relevant in a meta game where this one can potentially get one-shotted by ghost type attacks, for example, can get potentially one-shotted by dark type attacks, even like terastallizing out you know, of your pretty poor defensive typing. If you're at full HP, Lunala's taking any hit, can set a Trick Room maybe, can agility up, has Meteor Beam. Like, Lunala is a dangerous threat. Like, I remember this one putting in some decent work in Reg G, was putting some decent work in Reg I, and yeah, I respect Lunala as a Pokemon. I do believe it's more consistent than Kyogre in my opinion, but like, it can actually do decently. So yeah, I'm putting it in B. I think it's a good Pokemon. But yeah, we're back to shitters though. So Necrozma goes pretty much after Manaphy. I think Necrozma isn't really doing much, and is even worse than Kyurem. But yeah, Necrozma on its base form, yeah, don't use Necrozma in its base form. We got Duskmane up next, and yeah, Duskmane is in an interesting spot. I still think Trick Room, like it does in Ubers, I think the Necrozma Duskmane always has a place in the meta game. But it's not a Pokemon you're going to see on a regular basis. Not at all, to be honest. And I do have to respect that Necrozma Duskmane is, again, like one of the better offensive checks to Calyrex Ice Rider. You're pretty much forced to Terra against that. And even then, if you Terra into a Fire type, they're most likely going to have Earthquake to hit you super effectively. And if it's weakness policy, good luck. That's what I'm saying. Like, a weakness policy Necrozma Duskmane is always a dangerous threat to worry about, just because your typing compared to Dawn Wings is a lot better. You're not stuck with 4x weaknesses. Steel gives you a multitude of resistances, and then you come to the fact that you have Prism Armor cutting your weaknesses down by 25%. You have a bulky mon under Trick Room, gets the +2, and you're quite dangerous. Only problem is like, what do you call it? Sunsteel Strike obviously ignores abilities like Unaware, but Dondozo resists Steel. So yeah, it's a tough thing. But you also have Photon Geyser, so you can obviously get around that as well. I almost forgot about Photon Geyser as a move. So yeah, you can actually end up being Unaware Pokemon. And I think the Necrozma Duskmane can be a consistent threat. You know, if you just build around it in mind, for example, like you have to make sure that you make sure that its checks are dealt with 100%. Now Lunala here, I said Lunala, Dawn Wings, Necrozma. Unfortunately, just worse Cali S, worse Lunala. Not much else to really say about that. I'm gonna decently rate it high and put it above like these guys, because I think if you get Trick Room up, you obviously Terra into a Fairy type, have access to Meteor Beam. You are actually dangerous. You are actually dangerous with a Terra Fairy Terra Blast set, because you have Moongeist Beam to ignore abilities, so goodbye Dondozo. You have Meteor Beam, again, 120 base power move, coming off of your 157 special attack, and you have Terra Blast Fairy to hit something like Ting Lu. So yeah, I do think the Necrozma Dawn Wings can be dangerous in its own right, but for the risk that it takes to use a Pokemon like this, and when Lunala is right there, yeah, it's tough. It's tough to justify, but it's definitely one of the best Pokemon in D rank, 100%. Probably above Dialga, because again, Dialga's somewhat unproven. Like, Dawn Wings can actually prove itself decently. But yeah, moving on to Magearna now. I don't want to put Magearna in Onmon, because it's definitely better than a lot of these other 600 BST mythicals like Meloetta, Keldeo, Shaymin, Darkrai, and them. Like, Magearna is in a different level than those guys in my opinion, but at the same time, Magearna just doesn't really do anything necessarily. I do think like maybe a shift geared stored power set could probably like schmick someone up a little bit. To be honest, like, I'll honestly put money on it that that set could honestly mess someone up, especially with weakness policy, and Magearna could run away with games. So for that reason, I'm going to put in D rank. Above Hoopa for sure, because I think Magearna would definitely get you a lot more wins more than Hoopa. Now Zacian, base Zacian, is going in on Mons. It's pretty much the same situation as base Kyurem, same situation as Dialga-Origin, same situation as Deoxys normal. Just use the other version. It's just not too hard. Zacian-Crowned, we finally have our first A tier restricted. This was the best Pokemon in Generation 8, and obviously if we were playing BSS Generation 8, this one would be an S tier, but the nerfs keep it in check. We have common checks to it like Dondozo. Again, like, it is the second fastest restricted Pokemon, and well, to be fair, it's the third fastest. I don't want to like, I'm thinking of Deoxys Speed as like just a regular non-Ubers Pokemon because Deoxys Speed is not Ubers. But, you know, this is in restricted context. So, it's the third fastest restricted at 148 speed. It still hits hard. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it hits hard, but there are actually splashable checks to Zacian-Crowned. And the fact that his ability doesn't activate every switch-in does make it weak on average. You have checks like Ho-Oh, checks like Landorus, checks like Dondozo, defensive Kyogre. You know, Calyrex Shadow can outspeed it. Yeah, even like niche picks like Groudon and Necrozma-D can handle Zacian-Crowned. So yeah, it's not as powerful as it used to be. But again, some of these other restricteds aren't common, like Groudon, Necrozma-D. Even something like Ho-Oh is common, but you can obviously get out of that situation. You have access to SD, good coverage with Behemoth Blade, Wild Charge, Play Rough. And yeah, it's still quite a dangerous Pokemon. Like, don't sleep on Zacian-Crowned. I don't think anyone's really sleeping on it. Its usage has definitely gone down, but again, being able to check the dual bite combination of Koraidon Miraidon, you know, again, just being as fast and strong as you are, there's no reason for me to put Zacian C any lower than A rank. It is just that guy, you know, still is that guy. So yeah, Zamazenta base, again, I'm not going to put in F because I think there's like, well, maybe I should put in F. I don't know, because again, it's fulfilling a unique niche for itself that you are unironically a pretty fast fighting type. Like, you're faster than the dual bikes, you're faster than Chien-Pao. You know, you're at 138 base speed, and like Iron Defense Body Press could actually do something. But again, you have Zamazenta Crown for that, which has a better defensive typing. But yeah, I'm confident in putting Zamazenta in D just because of its speed tier alone, and I feel like the same thing goes for Zamazenta C as well. Like, both of them kind of do the same thing, but you know, just being a faster attacker. But at the same time, they are taking up your restricted slots, and you know, those are pretty precious to, you know, the average BSS player. So yeah, these guys, I can't say they're good in good conscience, they're not, but you know, I can see that they have like one niche that they can do, and I feel like they can succeed at it decently. But yeah, Eternatus, yeah, I'm putting Eternatus in B. Again, this is another like schmixing Stormon. I think this is like one of the better Stormons in my opinion, because again, it's fast, it's bulky, has access to cosmic power, has, you know, toxic spikes, hits hard. You know, like, again, Eternatus, like, I've seen Eternatus recently, and this one is very dangerous. Of course, it was up against my Calyrex Ice Rider, so I wasn't too threatened, because I'll just set up Trick Room, set up SD, and Eternatus wouldn't be able to do anything, particularly because it terrestrialized into a steel type, and I was running high horsepower. But, you know, if I didn't have high horsepower on my Calyrex Ice, if I didn't, you know, have Calyrex Ice in general, like, I feel like, you know, Eternatus would have, like, PP stored, like, some of my other members, and it is, like, a respectable Pokemon in its own right. So, yeah, I still think it's a solid option. Not as common as other restricteds, but, you know, like, it has its place in the metagame, 100%. Now, normal Calyrex, we all know where that's going. I would arguably say Fiona is better than base Calyrex, which is insane to say, but you know, having Take Heart, I think you get Acid Armor, but I know you have Take Heart, so, you know, that's one thing Fiona has over Calyrex. They have the same exact stat spread, but you have a better defensive typing than Take Heart, so, you know, like, Fiona is unironically better than base Calyrex. I will not be arguing about that with anyone in the comment section. But yeah, Ice Rider. Ice Rider. I think Ice Rider is better than Zacian-Crowned in the current metagame. Can I say he's an S? I don't think it's in S, because again, you're competing with Calyrex Shadow, you're taking up that same restricted slot because of species clause. So you're objectively just the worst Pokemon, because Calyrex Shadow is the better form. But don't get it twisted, this is the closest they've ever been. It wasn't this close in Gen 8, I'll tell you that now, but it's this close in Gen 9. And, you know, Calyrex Ice is one of the most respectable physical attackers in the game. You know, it makes Kyurem-Black look like a bitch. You know, you have Trick Room, you have 165 attack, you have a strong stab option with Glacial Lance. You're unsurprisingly very bulky. You're very bulky and can survive a lot of super effective hits for basically no reason other than, yeah, I just have big stats in HP, defense, and special defense for no reason. So yeah, Calyrex Ice, one of the best Pokemon in the game, 100%. Just a dangerous Pokemon to have to worry about. Again, like, facilitates. These two facilitate Dondozo usage as well as Koraidon, but even Koraidon has found ways of beating Dondozo with Choice Band. But yeah, these are the mons that can actually be kept in check by Dondozo. So that's why Dondozo sees a good use of usage. So yeah, Calyrex Shadow, I'm gonna put this in S. This is one of the best restricteds in the game. You know, like it just does numbers. It's the second fastest restricted at 150, only tying with Deoxys forms attack and normal form. Speed is faster, but again, speed is not like this offensive threat. It's more of a utility Pokemon at that. And yeah, you just hit very hard, can snowball out of control. This honestly facilitates Ting Lu usage. You see why Ting Lu is so common in BSS. That's because of Calyrex you know, Shadow. Like the meta revolves around it. That's what makes an S rank Pokemon. So yeah, Calyrex Shadow is our first S rank Pokemon. And now we're back into complete shitter. Zarude. Again, you're LARPing as a sub-legendary Pokemon, but you're unfortunately restricted. You're arguably worse than Meowscarada. What reason am I using you? You're too slow. Typing is abhorrent, and yeah, I'll just use Chien-Pao over you. I'm sorry, but yeah, Zarude is going into Unmon's category, probably around here. And now moving on to Koraidon. Yeah, Koraidon is in S tier, 100%. It's tough for me to decide which are the best out of. Like, spoiler alert, Miraidon's going in S, but you know, it's tough for me to decide who's the best out of Miraidon, Koraidon, and Calyrex Shadow. It's tough to say. I just think these guys are unequivocally S rank 100%. I might as well just slap both of them into S rank at the same time. Like, I'm just gonna do that. These guys run the show. Koraidon hits incredibly hard, harder than any other Pokemon we've really seen up to this point. I don't even think Zacian-Crowned at +1 was even hitting this hard, because you just get a random attack boost from Sun being active. You get a random special attack boost when Electric Terrain is active. You add a 50% multiplier with Choice Band and Choice Specs respectively, and you're just stuck in the sense where like Ting Lu seems to be the answer, but Draco is still 2-hit clearing that with max defense plus Vessel of Ruin being applied to reduce your special attack stat by 25%. Banded Koraidon can 2-hit kill Dondozo with CC, and you know, they won't see it coming, to be honest. Like, they'll switch in assuming that you're maybe SD loaded dice, but Choice Band is blowing up Dondozo, and it just comes to the fact that these guys' damage output is the highest out of any restricted, any Pokemon in the game, and you know, even their supposed answers don't want to be switching into these guys. So it's tough for me to decide, because Calyrex Shadow isn't doing damage numbers like these guys can. But because Calyrex Shadow is so fast, has very versatile, all three of these guys have versatile set diversity. But, you know, like, you're just lacking that sort of breaking power, but at the same time, you can snowball with your ability. So you're arguably going to be doing even more damage than both of them once you get like 1 or 2 boosts up. So, you know, yeah, these guys are easily the big three outside of Arceus, of course. And yeah, Terapagos on the other hand, this guy has seen better days. I used him in Reggie, I think, and you know, he was decent, but this guy, unfortunately, you're very terror reliant. You're probably the most terror reliant Pokemon on this list, which doesn't bode well, because you might want to terror something else. You know, you want to terror any of your other 2 teammates that you're bringing to a battle, and you know, you're unfortunately stuck with a Pokemon that just doesn't really have the stats without terrestrialization. And yeah, like, you're pretty much only able to really do your best under Trick Room. Like, the team I was using Terapagos Stellar on was just like a Trick Room team with Calyrex Ice Rider, and I still think you could probably succeed with Terapagos Ice Rider teams, but that's pretty much like the only comp you could realistically use Terapagos and Terapagos in. Potentially maybe Lunala Terapagos, maybe, you know, Magearna. I don't know, you would have to test it, but it's just a tough mon to justify. But it still has the damage output, it still has the ability to cancel out both Miraidon and Koraidon, which unfortunately only activates once a battle though. So yeah, that's a fun ability to have. But yeah, I'll put Terapagos like here, I guess. I don't want to say he's not good, because I know what Terapagos can do. It's basically just going to do the same shit it did in Reg G. No, was it Reg G or Reg I? No, it was definitely Reg I, because single restricted. Why the fuck am I using Terapagos? But yeah, like, I'll just put it here because I know this one has some potential. And finally, we got Petrarunt, and Petrarunt here is like, I don't want to say sub-legendary LARPing as restricted, because again, it probably is doing that, but unlike the other Pokemon like that are landed here, which are more offensively inclined, like Zarude, Darkrai, Manaphy, for example, Keldeo, you know, Petrarunt is more defensive, but like, his defenses don't really come into clutch too much. Like, At most, you can check Zacian-Crowned, but even then, that's just setup bait for it. If you want like a bulky poison type, you have Eternatus. So it's just tough to justify Petrarant, which I'm going to put in D rank because, again, I don't think it's an Unmon, but like it is just not really doing much. So yeah, that's it for all the restricted. But wait, guys, you're probably saying I'm forgetting a pretty big elephant in the room. I'm probably forgetting God. So yeah, we have Arceus to go through. So yeah, stick around for the Arceus section of this video. And we are back with the Arceus section of the video. I left Arceus until last because, you know, there's 18 Arceus forms to talk about. And to be fair, I could have just ended off the tier list by saying Arceus in general as a whole mon, because again, Arceus is just one Pokemon but 18 different iterations. You know, if I was just to rank Arceus as an individual thing with all of its forms included, obviously he's going to be the best restricted mon in the game. Regulation J is Regulation J because of Arceus itself. So obviously that would be pretty, you know, basic and boring to talk about. But what I do want to talk about is every single Arceus form individually, because I think while all of the Arceus forms are, again, still Arceus, and the metagame does revolve around Arceus, some forms are obviously better than others, as is the case due to the fundamental things with their typing and, you know, certain moves that Arceus gets. For example, you know, Flying Arceus doesn't get a good physical flying move, but whereas Arceus Fire, even Arceus Ground, obviously have Flare Blitz and Earthquake to use, and, you know, they're better Dragon Dance sweepers than the likes of Arceus Flying. You know, examples like that. But yeah, let us speak about every single Arceus form individually, and, you know, it is good fun. But either way, Arceus Normal, aka E-Killer, aka, you know, again, like, it's tough for me to say, because like I could put in S at the same time, because again, it's the most threatening Arceus form. I might as well just put in S. E-Killer Arceus is probably the best Arceus form in Regulation J, in my opinion. I think there's some other types that come close to it, but in terms of its just, you know, ability to just do what it does, SD Extreme Speed is definitely one of the best win cons in the entire regulation right now, so that's a no-brainer for me. Arceus Fighting, tough to say. Again, none of these Arceus forms are going below D, just letting you know, because at the same time, Arceus Bug could just Terrestrialize and LARP as a different Arceus type. So, you know, but obviously that takes up your Terrestrialization slot and, you know, opportunity cost. But, yeah, none of these are going below D, just letting you know now. And I'll be hard-pressed to say even some of them are even in D in the first place. But, again, we'll see when we get there. Arceus Fighting, though, tough to say where it belongs, because I don't know why you'd want to use this Arceus form over, like, Koraidon or even the likes of Zamazenta. I guess you get like a special CM sort of set and you have a positive matchup into Tinglu, for example, and, you know, other dark type Pokemon. So I guess Arceus Fighting does have that niche. You know, I'll put it in C, because I can actually see the niche, and again, it's an Arceus form, so again, I have to kind of respect the fact that it's an Arceus form. Again, 120 in every stat, and, you know, it is a very versatile mon, the most versatile mon in this regulation, so you could probably get some decent use out of Arceus Fighting. I believe this is Arceus Flying. Again, like, it took me a while to figure out the colors, but I really had to... I'm not colorblind, by the way, but some of these Arceus forms look very similar, so, you know, it was hard for me to figure, like, Steel and Flying. Again, that meme with Arceus Steel and Arceus Flying still exists in the modern generation, so what can I say? But yeah, Arceus Flying, you'd say offensively, it's one of the better Arceus forms, because Flying is a very hard stab to resist, but at the same time, being an Arceus form that's Rocks weak, even though rocks aren't rocks are still good, obviously, for break and focus sashes, but they're nothing major. You can go playing BSS games without having to worry about stealth rock. But again, having a mon that does take that 25 coming in isn't really too good. And at the same time, negative matchup into Miraidon, yeah, so that's pretty tough for me to justify. Is it better than Arceus Fighting? Tough to say. But I do think as a general Arceus form, I don't really see much use for Arceus Flying, to be honest, because, again, I just feel like there's better Arceus forms for you to use. And again, like, Arceus has to take into account that, you know, the opportunity cost of using a better Arceus form. So some of the worst forms, again, like, I might have to slap some into D, because I'm just like, just use this form over this other form or this other restricted, and then you can have a better other restricted like Miraidon, Koraidon, basically these top guys. So yeah, that's the unfortunate reality of Arceus Flying. Arceus Poison, yeah, this is also just another weird form. There's a lot of these weird Arceus types where they don't really have an established sort of niche, like compared to some of the other forms we'll be discussing, like E-Killer. Like, why am I using Arceus Poison? Like, please give me some justification. The only thing I can really say with Arceus Poison is like Cosmic Power sort of set with stored power. Again, there's another form that does this better, but the fact that you cannot be poisoned kind of helps with Toxic. But again, like, Stool is nothing major in BSS to the fact that you're gonna have to worry about, you know, being Toxic Stooled with a Cosmic Power set. But, you know, every single form can commit that. It's just about, you know, you're gonna have to Terra opportunity cost, and there's just better forms that can do it. So for me, again, probably putting Arceus Poison in not good / outclassed, because again, I don't really know what this does. Like, again, it can Dragon Dance. It has Gunk Shot now. I think we got Gunk Shot in Gen 9, so actually having a pretty good Poison stab doesn't really bother you. But at the same time, Poison is not that good offensively. it really isn't. Unless you have a base Fairy type Pokemon, like, that's where Poison really shines. But, you know, yeah, it's just a bit hard to justify. Next up is Arceus Ground, and Arceus Ground is definitely one of the better Arceus forms, I'll tell you that now. Just because your stab is just one of the better ones, to be honest. I'm putting this guy in probably B, to be honest. Like, outside of E-Killer Arceus, I think DD Arceus Ground or even TM Arceus Ground is probably one of the most threatening Arceus forms. And also being a ground type at base means you have an electric immunity to handle the likes of Miraidon, while being able to potentially threaten out Terrify Koraidon with a Dragon Dance set. That cannot be understated, in my opinion. Even though ground has a nice weakness, so you have to worry about Ice Rider and you know, Chien-Pao, for example. Ground offensively just checks a lot of the top Pokemon, the most used Pokemon in the format. Again, Miraidon's weak to ground, you're going to force that to Terra. Zacian-Crowned is weak to ground. You have Stone Edge for Ho-Oh. And yeah, you're one of, again, Arceus Ground has always been one of the best Arceus forms, even in Ubers. So, you know, this is a no-brainer for me. Probably above these guys, I'll be honest. You know what? I'll put him in A. I'll put him in A again. It's a feeling sort of thing, but I feel like my intuition is decent enough for me to solidly put this in A, because again, this is one of the better Arceus forms. So yeah, Arceus Rock. Sorry to say, but like, why are you using this over Ground Arceus exactly? You come with 3 more weaknesses. No, you come with 2 more weaknesses, and yeah, one of those is a fighting weakness. So yeah, I'm not gonna respect you too much. You're also weak to steel. That does not really help your case, unfortunately. Definitely one of the lower level Arceus forms for sure, because why not just use a better form? Arceus Bug, same scenario as Rock, to be honest. Like, why am I using this? But I think Bug has a unique sort of defensive profile where, you know, you can actually get away with it because you're fighting resist. But at the same time, your stab is pretty much the worst out of the Arceus form. So yeah, down into D tier you go. Because again, you're just outclassed. So what can you do? Arceus Ghost, in the old days when this thing had Shadow Force, I could justify it. Now you're pretty much forced to go like CM sets. And at that point, you're kind of just outclassed as a Ghost special attacker by, you know, Calyrex Shadow, Lunala, and the like. But again, you're still Arceus Ghost. You're not the likes of Necrozma Wings, so you're not going in detail. Like, you are still an Arceus form at the end of the day. And I could confidently say you're probably better than everyone in C, basically. So yeah, I'm going to put Arceus Ghost in C, because I can see the niche. Again, like, I'm not going to be using DD sets. DD sets are basically dead and gone. But this thing could LARP as an E-Killer, you know, variant, you know, have SD, Terra Normal Extreme Speed, you get rid of your Ghost weakness, and that could definitely just slap out Calyrex Shadow unexpectedly. So, actually, maybe I'll put it in B. I think Arceus Ghost has that potential as the E-Killer LARP, because you can obviously, like, you can get rid of your... If you Terra Normal, you get rid of your Ghost weakness, you get rid of your Dark weakness, you can actually cut Calyrex Shadow, because at the end of the day, Shadow Claw, like, you're getting boosted by Spooky Plate, so I can say that does a decent damage at +2, and it will be enough to deal with Calyrex Shadow, especially if they've already terrestrialized. If they terrestrialized, you just E-Speed or just Shadow Claw into E-Speed, you'll get the kill. You also have a positive matchup into also Ice Rider as well. Plus, you just have Terra Normal Extreme Speed, which just makes E-Killer Arceus like one of the best Pokemon in the format. So yeah, I think I could put Arceus Ghost in B, but yeah, I think I could put that in B comfortably. I feel probably above Lunala here. Arceus Steel, One the best defensive typing in the game, but does that really come into clutch when you're fighting on Fire Weak in a Miraidon meta game? Tough for me to justify that. Again, you could obviously terrestrialize into a water type, but why not just have Arceus water, or you know, bulky ass water type? Like I'm not, again, I feel like Arceus Steel kind of does the same thing of Poison, where you have a cosmic power set that is immune to toxic and stuff, but at the same time, yeah, there's just better Arceus forms to use. is really tough for me to really justify this one, in my opinion. Fire Arceus has the niche of Sun. You know, doesn't really have any defensive. He's not a Ho-Oh where you at least get the defensive utility of a massive special wall and regenerator plus a broken ass signature move. But yeah, Arceus Fire, I think it's probably better than Fighting in my opinion, but like, yeah, again, it's quite tough to justify. And as you can see, there's a reason I got confused with the colors. Like, Arceus Fighting is this one, but you can tell it's Arceus Fire because the chest thing here is red. So yeah, it was tough for me to try and decide which form was which. But yeah, Arceus Fire, probably not too impressed, but I guess you could try a Koraidon Arceus Fire team, and you could have a pretty strong wall break on your hands on the special side with either Judgment or go like SD Flare Blitz, Terra Normal Extreme Speed. Definitely has some potential there for sure. Water Arceus on the other hand, definitely up here as well. I can't really put this thing in D because, again, Arceus Water has one of the best defensive typings in the game. Despite the fact that is Miraidon weak, you know, you're steel resistant, you're fire resistant, you're ice resistant. The typing really does help you out here. You also check Ho-Oh, you check Arceus Ground. You can somewhat check Zacian. This is more of a defensive Arceus form, in my opinion, where you're utilizing your bulk. You hit hard, you have access to Taunt, you can just do a lot, and there's a lot of potential with Arceus Water here. So I'm going to put it at the top of C tier here, because I do think like it can perform. I haven't really seen it do anything, because you're just going to be using like even the better Arceus forms than it, but I really feel like this one has a lot going for it. Grass Arceus is another interesting one, because I can't really, again, can't see the justification for using this one really. It's tough. It's tough because you check Kyogre, but that's all you really check. To be honest, you're kind of just weak to every other top restricted better than you. At least as well, maybe not the C guys, but the top restricted you don't really match up too well into them outside of like Arceus Ground and Kyogre realistically. So I can't really put this thing any higher, I feel. But yeah. Electric Arceus, I'm gonna tell you now, again, maybe this is my bias speaking a little bit, but I'm putting Arceus Electric at least in B, because I feel like I said with Kyurem-Black, the reason why I respect Kyurem-Black is because Bolt Beam combination in a tier that likes to spam Dondozo Tinglu cause, yeah, I have to respect Arceus Electric. You can Terra Ice, Ice Beam, Calm Mind, Judgment, Ice Beam, Recover. Very strong set. I like it a lot. You're also an electric resist, and you can actually pair quite well with Miraidon to have your Judgment being boosted by electric terrain, and then you have a pretty threatening Pokemon on your hands. Again, it's not the most consistent mon, but like it gets the job done when you need it to get the job done. Checks Kyogre. Like there's not much that wants to be switching into Judgment, and ground types lose that Terra Ice, Ice Beam. So yeah, Arceus Electric is quite strong. Unfortunately, you get the drawback of terrestrializing into a nice type, which, you know, gives you a fire and fighting weakness, something that you probably don't want. But, you know, being able to terrestrialize out your ground weakness is helpful in certain circumstances, especially when facing Pokemon like Tinglu and Ice Rider. So, and even Chen, oh, well, I was going to say Chen, why am I saying Chenpa? I'm tweaking. But yeah, just being able to terrestrialize, you know, because Ice Rider has high horsepower, Zacian could be Blast Ground, so you're careful around that for sure. But yeah, Psychic Arceus, I've actually seen this thing do some decent work. Like I mentioned with bulky Psychic Settle sweepers like Lugia, Deoxys Defense, Arceus Psychic just outclasses them because you're bulkier and you have additional power thanks to Mind Plate boosting stored power. So yeah, you're the best stored power Arceus form, I believe. You could definitely terrestrialize out of your dark weakness and terrestrialize into a fairy type. You know, you still end up resistant fighting, so Koraidon is shit in itself. And then, you know, you also terrestrialize out of your ghost weakness, and you're bulky enough to obviously tank hits from Ice Rider, Shadow Rider, and pretty much all these top restricted once you get 2 or 3 cosmic power boosts, and you know, you also have body press to deal with dark types. So yeah, I respect Arceus Psychic quite a bit, and even in Ubers, this is a Pokemon that's not really respected, but when you're in BSS and it's 3v3, Arceus Psychic can definitely be one of the most dangerous Arceus forms. So yeah, I have to respect it. Ice Arceus, I still think it somewhat does the same thing as what do you call it, Arceus Electric, but you start off with a West base typing. However, you're better at taking out ground types, because number one, you're not weak to ground types, and number two, you actually have stab on your judgment to threaten things like Ting-Lu. Plus, you still just have Terra Electric options to get rid of your West defense. Like, being able to turn into an electric type is better than the electric type turning into an ice type, you know, because you're losing more weaknesses, for example. So yeah, maybe I should respect Arceus Ice a bit more, I guess. Yeah, I'll put it here, because again, I still think it's just a lower version of Arceus Electric, which still does a pretty decent job in my opinion. And then we got Arceus Dragon, another Arceus form where I'm just like, why am I going to be using this as a dragon? The dragon type stock market has, you know, gone, like, the stocks are in the newer guys rather than the old guys. So I don't know why I'll use this guy. It's the same thing with why am I using Palkia or, you know, Origin Dialga or Reshiram or Kyurem-White, for example. Like, there's no reason for me to use these guys over Koraidon and Miraidon, and no reason for me to use this over a better Arceus form. So yeah, unfortunately, Arceus Dragon is, you know, in this sad state of, you know, limbo, purgatory, whatever you want to call it. Arceus Dark, also a very interesting one with a very interesting niche, because you'd say that it can check the psychic types, it can check Ice Rider, it can check Shadow Rider, it can check Lunala and other things. Like, you're only using Arceus Dark to check the ghost and psychic types, and most of those guys can terrestrialize into a fairy type and have type matchup against you. So it's tough for me to decide that one. But again, like Ting-Lu, you can Terra Poison, resist Fairy, and, you know, get away with it. You could also be a Settle Wincon. So I think Arceus Dark's natural profile into the upper restricteds does warrant my respect, and is definitely better than Fighting and Fire 100%. Is it better? Would I use it over some of these other guys? Again, they fulfill a unique sort of niche. Like, I guess I can put above Groudon in my opinion, and then yeah, I think that's pretty much fine. Then our last form is Arceus Fairy, and again, maybe it's bias speaking, but I do think Arceus Fairy again is probably the second best Arceus form in my opinion, for a few reasons. Now, Fairy again is a very good base typing because you're immune to Dragon, and you know, some of the best restricteds are Dragon type Pokemon. Number two, I think your Calm Mindset is one of the better Calm Minds, because Fairy is so hard to wall effectively. Again, the only types that resist Fairy are Poison, Fire, and Steel. So outside of these three typings, your stab is pretty much fair game. And number three, you know, I've been running a Taunt, Calm Mind, Judgment, Recover set. Again, you could drop Taunt for Earth Power to, you know, hit Steel type super effectively. But at the same time, having Taunt is just really good, and I feel like this one just does it the best out of all the Arceus forms. Your typing fundamentally is good. You can terrestrialize into a water type, so you can end up checking Terrafire, Koraidon. And yeah, I've just had very good success with this Pokemon, and I think it deserves, you know, some respect in the A rank. But yeah, this is it for the entire restricted tier list for BSS Regulation J. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, this is just my opinion. Let me know down below what you think of this tier list, and also the fact that if I wasn't ranking every single Arceus form individually, obviously Arceus would be in S tier, but I thought the more interesting thing to do was to rank them all individually. Unfortunately, these are the Arceus forms that I can't really justify using, because I just feel like they're just worse than the guys above them. And then, like, some of these other guys, like these mons, you're probably never building with them because they just suck. These guys, you could find like one niche for them to really do, but otherwise they're not good mons at all. These guys are like decent. You could get some good wins with these guys, but you know, they're definitely harder to use. B are like, yeah, I'm feeling a bit shy, so I want to use some of these guys. I know they're going to succeed. And then S and A are like, these are the ones you're going to be building with most of the time, in my opinion. But yeah, thanks for watching the video. Like and subscribe, join the kingdom, all of that good stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.